Hi, everybody. I'm here today to just sort of document all my occult books, and uh, and I'm wearing my Rolling Stone shirt from way back at the Voodoo Lounge tour. I was actually backstage at this show in Memphis. Slightly occult looking shirt, huh? Can you believe I still have this? And uh, as I recall, they told me after the show that I was told that I was permanently banned from Backstage Stones forever. One of my early bannings. Hey, so I guess I'm just gonna. There's a couple reasons I want to do this. One is I want to get rid of these books; they're just taking up space, and I really just don't have space for them here. And so I just want to kind of document that I have them, so that when I say that I have read this in occult books or certain groups are occult or what they believe, I know what I'm talking about. I have the book. The Hidden Way Across the Threshold. This is super creepy stuff, and it's quite rare. A lot of these books are very rare, and I can't sell them. I wouldn't feel right about selling them really. So, going to be chucking them, I guess. Hidden Way Across the Threshold. J.C. Stewart. Hard to come by there. Here's some the Voyagers, the Secrets of Amenti. This is going to take a little while. As we go through them, I'm ultimately going to tell you really the contents of what's going on with them. And this is channeled stuff. And so, if it's channeled, it's considered a cult, right? And the Secrets of Amenti, the Emerald Covenant. Okay, here's some of the. Okay, here we go. Here, I got a copy here of the Kabbalah. That's kind of one of the oldest, I guess, what you would consider occult books. It's, the term Kabbalistic kind of means occult, really. And it's mysticism, the way of the Jewish mystic. Really, we're going to discover as we go that pretty much all of this stuff is mysticism. Occult simply means, hidden. And so there's always a hidden element, but it typically has to do with hidden knowledge or something, the mysteries. Now, this stuff is always in the Bible, often as the mystery religions, right? Mystery religions. But this is mystical Judaism. And so, you'd think of that as basically an evil book. We're going to come back to that, though. The Secret Teachings of Manly P. Hall. Now, this is a very well-known book. He was an honorary Freemason. And here, I've got quite a few markings here. You can see I really have studied these books and know what's going on with this stuff. There's actually, in this book contains, I thought that's what I had marked, but, it contains the contract, basically, between yourself and Satan. The deal is, if you, let's see, how does it go? You give yourself to Satan, and he assigns a demon to you in this world, in this life, and then you pretty much get whatever you want in this life. Then, after you die, probably live really long, live long, and then die, and then, well, for eternity, you're a slave to that demon. Manly P. Hall, that is the real deal there. What else we got? Oh, the Zohar. This is like commentary on the Kabbalah. More Jewish mysticism. And again, I'm gonna bring this up again here in relation to Christianity, oddly enough, coming up. And so, speaking of which, let's just go to some of these supposedly Christian books. Course in Miracles. And, this is another, like, the book, A Course in Miracles, is another channeled book. Anytime you hear something's channeled, that's where they just connected directly with some entity, and they got the words word for word and just wrote it down from some being, usually an ascended master, frequently something a Christian might call a demon, perhaps. Course in Miracles. And so again, these are, this is like pseudo-Christian type stuff. And, the deal with the pseudo-Christianity, and you're going to see it, and you'll see it all over television, Christianity, for example, is that the focus is on self and it's not on, a sacrificial life. Like let's say you wanted to be like Jesus. What did he do? Did he live his best life now? And did he drive a Mercedes? None of those things. And those are all what's in a lot of this pseudo Christianity. Course in Miracles, channel book, occult channel book. Here we go. The Law of Attraction. Esther and Jerry Hicks. She channels this character named Abraham. Is the deal, and I'm sure you know what the Law of Attraction is, right? It's the secret. It's the secret. And so. Yeah, the secret. And so really it's like you visualize stuff. The idea really, might as well kind of get into this part a little bit. Is the idea all these have a lot of similar characteristics, and this sort of visualization, changing, creating your reality with words or thoughts, and kind of like God does is the deal. And so you're a divine person. You co-create or create like God does simply by visualizing or speaking things into existence. And that's essentially the law of attraction in a nutshell. And it's also exactly what the serpent tempts Eve with in Genesis 3. And so we're really living in the same day as Genesis 3. Uh-oh. More of this stuff, the lost teachings of Jesus, Elizabeth Clare Prophet stuff. This is more channeled literature. So they connected up with something in a trance, in a deep meditation, and it wrote the book. She didn't really write the book, or they. Masters and Disciples on the Path. And so, sounds great. Here's some more pseudo stuff. How about the miracle of agape love? Just another one of those tricky things they do. It's the most dynamic force in the universe, and so forth. So this is just another where you're going to try and visualize and stuff. And it's a sort of a new agey Christianity. It has nothing to do with biblical Christianity. Again, Jesus lived a life of sacrifice, self-sacrifice for Jehovah and for others, to serve others. It's not about getting anything you want, living some great life here on earth. Look at this. God, this stuff's crazy. Unbelievable. Peter Popoff. Look at this mailer. Anyway, here we go. You know what I just said there? He's going to say the same thing, basically. Yes, money cometh to me now. You just have to make these positive declarations and things like that, and it'll create that reality, which is, it's false. That doesn't happen. Just because you imagine or say something doesn't make it happen. Now, God could do that. Here we go. Yes, my strength shall be renewed, and so forth. So just incredible stuff. This is, of course, you got to send them money, I'm sure. Hey, Paula White, the president's spiritual advisor, she wants you to send her $1,000, and she'll put a blessing on you. Here's a good one. Marijuana in the Bible. Ethiopian Coptic Church. Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church. Now, the Bible really doesn't say anything negative about marijuana, but in this particular kind of creepy religion, it's like a sacrament. It's a sacramental thing, and again, you're back to what you would call cultic religion. There, it's not biblical Christianity by any means. Here we go. You can become a certified apostle or prophet. How about that? The University School of the Apostles' Prophets Certification Manual. This is the official manual, passed down from the New Testament. Yeah, well, those certifications. I joke about the lady who's the Bishop of Washington. She's the Right Reverend Dr. Bishop. I forgot her name. But what I did notice was that her superior was complimenting, and he is the most Reverend Dr. Bishop. God speaks. Is that charismatic stuff, this is from a guy that lives over by Rico, actually, where I used to live, and he has, preaching in a church in Telluride, and he gets messages, from God. It's always, suspect when somebody tells you that, by the way. You can do a video on how to flag, false preachers or whatever, and which ends up being most of them, sadly. I don't mean most, like 51%. I mean most. Getting in the gap. This whole idea of that sort of occult style, Eastern style meditation, where you get into that emptiness, you empty yourself. And so that's what this is about, getting into that gap between your thoughts. And that's great when you're playing golf, but that's an occult practice as a meditation. Readings on the resurrection. Here we go. The children of the light. Another cult, When the guy tells you, you're not to read any other literature or you're not to believe anything else, that he's 100% right all the time because, God, he speaks with God. He hangs out with God. He's been to heaven and all this kind of stuff. There's a good chance, he's false. Another one of the lost teachings. They were found, by the way. And then the yoga of Jesus. I mentioned about how that type of meditation, real yoga, is not the physical form. In fact, I think it's in here. I had a letter where I contacted a guy about his yoga classes, and it was a form of yoga with a strange name, but it has no spiritual component. It's just stretching. So that does exist. However, the word yoga means union, right? Union. It doesn't mean stretching. And it's mostly a meditation practice, real yoga. Raja yoga, king yoga. You can tell that I have read this stuff, know something about it, about yoga. And obviously it's an occult practice. It's not for it's not for Christians. There's Vivekananda here, Swami Vivekananda. Anybody that's like a Swami and wears a robe and has a special haircut, Christian type people wear scarves or any of that stuff. That's not biblical Christian. That goes outside of biblical Christianity. There are no costumes in biblical Christianity. No holy clothes. Where are we now? Oh yeah, we were talking about that. Oh, here we go. Let's look at some of this stuff up here. Another one of the reasons I want to show you this. There's a couple reasons, but one of the reasons is that I want you to understand that this idea of like Satanism being like satanic panic or something like that doesn't really happen out there. This stuff's been going on for right here we're covering about 150 years with these books. And there's people that follow these books, believe these books, they buy these books, they live by these are their scriptures, really. And so this is not and this is what I would call Luciferian, not necessarily satanic, but it's the same guy. And so, it's a real deal. Well, wouldn't you know it? Come on. Anyway, look at that. It's 100% volume.
And who could it have been?
Oh.
Let's see, I don't know. Let me think. Let me knock on Mr. Noggin. Who could trick us into doing that? Could have been Satan.
Sure didn't want to play, right? But you get the idea. That's a big joke. Oh, there's not satanic stuff. Oh, we're about to move into some... Oh, I wanted to go ahead and mention some more about the Christian books. Here we go. Here's a supposedly woke pastor. But the idea of this pastor is... The reason I'm showing you this, and remember I mentioned this is like Genesis 3, the serpent. They teach exactly the same thing as the serpent teaches. And it astonishes me that they're not aware of this. It's like you'd think they read the Bible. We're talking about chapter 3.
A woke female pastor is about to
we're talking about chapter 3.
And
I had all these properly queued up.
For disobeying him.
But you ever get this feeling that things are trying to not cooperate? Anyway, so I had all this queued up. And she basically says here, just in a few sentences early into her sermon, that God lied to Adam and Eve in the garden. Well, oddly enough, that's exactly what the serpent said. In fact, that is literally the oldest trick in the book. I mean, you've heard that saying? This is it. The oldest trick in the book. Uh, Eve says, oh, no, we're not supposed to touch that fruit even, or we'll die. And immediately he says, oh, well, that, he doesn't say God lied. He says, no, you won't die. And so he's calling God a liar right there. And of course, Eve falls for it. And that is literally the oldest trick in the book. And it's also known as reincarnation. Reincarnation, oldest trick in the book. God's lying, and you're going to get another life after this one. In fact, an infinite number of them, maybe. And so, anyway, that's what she's teaching. Teach whatever you want, but this is supposed to be Christian. It's ridiculous. That's what I dislike. That's why I'm going to mention this church too, over in Telluride, Christ Presbyterian Church. Supposedly, this is ridiculous. I thought Presbyterian meant between Baptists. It was like one was dunked and one you sprinkled or whatever. But no, this is Jesus versus Lucifer. These guys at Christ Presbyterian Church, the former preacher and the current one, are Luciferians, and they preach that exact same serpent doctrine. Again, you'd think they'd get past chapter 3 of the Bible, but apparently not. They're big academics. This guy has, all these awards in oratory and all kinds of things. His predecessor, Pat, literally, I have a video of it. I kept it in case it got erased or something. But he's literally teaching about the Kabbalah and the Zohar. And these are mysticism, mystical books. And I guarantee the new preacher has copies of these and uses them, and is a mystic. They call them. Look, I'm not calling them mystics. They call themselves mystics. And like I said, in one of the Pat sermons, he espouses these books and theosophy, and we're coming up to that, which is totally Luciferian, and calls himself a mystic. And then toward the end of the sermon, he starts saying, I am a God, I am a God. Well, that's what they believe. And that, like what we were talking about, they can probably create their own realities and things like that. And so the new pastor, in his very first sermon, I watched it to see if there was some improvement. And right at the beginning of his sermon, he stated that he didn't believe that everything Jesus said was true. Now, he said Jesus did say some good things. But, this is supposed to be a Christian church. Again, if you don't want to believe Jesus, whatever. But this is serious deception going on. And that church, I don't even set foot in there anymore. It's too creepy. What else we got here? Like I said, I had these all loaded up and queued. Oh, this guy. Let's see what he's saying. Same thing. This is supposed to be a Christian preacher, but they claim to be prophets. This is kind of like the other guy over in Telluride, the NAR, New Apostolic Reformation, is kind of what's going on. And these guys talk to God. They take trips to heaven. Look, Jesus took me to heaven and showed me what they are studying there. Are you really buying that? I don't get it. I don't get it. Nobody goes to heaven but, once, if they're lucky. And then, this, I don't know. All right. Let's get back to the books. Let's see, where are we going from here? Helena Blavatsky, really the founder of the New Age movement, 1880s, ISIS Rising or something like that, I think was her first book, and then The Secret Doctrine. The Secret Doctrine is something that's really practiced by all major systems of this kind of these religions, including Catholicism, I'm pretty sure. This is the Secret Doctrine ultimately has to do with the idea that they have two doctrines. One is for like the laity, and then one is for the elite. And so to the laity, you teach all this, be good to each other type stuff, and peace on earth. But the upper echelon, just these elite in these groups, know that they're worshiping Lucifer. They're worshiping Lucifer. That's their thing. They're 100% Luciferians. It's amazing that they just, they read the Bible from the other perspective. You know, Jehovah's the bad guy. Jesus is really not ever mentioned, and in their eyes is nothing. You know, maybe just a good teacher or something. But anyway, the secret doctrine really kind of kicked off the New Age movement, 1890s, late 1890s. Helena P. Blavatsky. Okay, and then that brings us to Alice Bailey, which is sort of her descendant, if you will, spiritually speaking. And so these are some of her books. I have a single out video one, this that talks a lot about this one on occult meditation. Eastern style meditation is occult meditation. It's not a Christian thing to be messing with this type of medication they do. I got a whole video on that. But anyway, that's one of her books. Let's see here what else we got. Compilation on Sex, The Labors of Hercules. Now these were all written in I think like let's take a look. I think these are from like the 1920s, something like that. 1930, first printing of this one. And so this is going to freak you out, really, what's going on with these books. Look at this creepy logo on there. That's derived from an inverted pentagram. I've looked at that before, and it's the logo of the Lucis Trust. I want you to see this. This is not a joke. The Lucis Trust. And, Lucis sounds suspiciously like, I hate to say it, Lucifer, right? Actually, this company that archives these books, the Lucis Trust, originally was called, you're not going to believe it, Lucifer Publishing. Esoteric astrology. Hey, if you're messing with astrology, that's a cult. And this esoteric, that's another word you hear a lot of, it just kind of means hidden, right? I think esoteric. The esoterics. Discipleship in the New Age. Again, this is literally New Age scripture, if you will. And then, beyond what I've already shown you, really, about how, the Lucis Publishing and everything, and I actually have one of them, has Lucifer in it here. I have one of those. But it actually comes, here we go, from the United Nations. That's right. This company, if you will, is located inside the United Nations. And this is what they do primarily. They're the official publisher for the United Nations, right? Lucifer Publishing originally. And now they kind of keep an archive of these books of Alice Bailey in the United Nations. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the reality. Look, the books, Lucis Publishing, the books of Alice Bailey. Now, how do I know they're coming? Well, I'm a member of their society and everything. That's why I have this stuff. And it all comes from the UN. Ageless wisdom. We're always talking about, remember I said these are mystery religions, so there's always mystical, hidden, ancient, secret knowledge. And even though you can access this knowledge from books or whatever, the Freemasons or Mormons or whatever, you can, so it's not really secret. It just, people that are not, what's the word they always use? People that are not just, up to it, that are not as elevated as others, that are not worthy. That's what they do. They work on your pride. If you're not worthy, you don't really get it or whatever. But even though they're not truly secret, they're really just for the worthy. And again, that's back to the ones up at the top that are going to know they're worshiping Satan. Goodwill in world affairs. Again, this all comes out of the United Nations. Oh, I know what I wanted to show you on this, is that right here on the back is the Great Invocation. You understand, this is the scripture of the United Nations. They archive this stuff as if it's their scripture. So this is behind everything they do and all their philosophies about how to run the world. But here they have the Great Invocation here on their publication. And again, this stuff is not made up. Here is Eleanor Roosevelt reading the Great Invocation to the United Nations, right? And so We're going to hear a little bit of it, but if it comes up. But you get the idea that this stuff is totally what's running the United Nations, and all this stuff I get from them. If you want to see on the address, now it says 866. Now the original company was Lucifer Publishing at 666 United Nations Plaza, and then later on they updated to the Lucis Trust at 866.
A prayer which belongs to no group or individual, but to men and women of goodwill everywhere. The Sunday editor of the New York Times has said, we need, in addition to the A-bomb and the H-bomb, what I call the F-bomb, the spiritual bomb. You are invited to share the meditation of the great invocation as it is repeated by an outstanding American, Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
This is Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt speaking from New York within the United Nations building. We're living today in a troubled world. In many parts of the world, people have a sense of discouragement as to whether they will ever solve their
So the Great Invocation, again, it's kind of like the Lord's Prayer for Lucifer, okay? Evoking the power of the one life. And this is her literally reading that prayer to the United Nations. I mean, I'm trying to make sure you understand the connection there. So anytime you hear about the United Nations, you got to know what's behind. What's behind that is this occult stuff. Okay, and then, another group, the Rosicrucians. Let's take a look at that. This is interesting to me because I used to collect these old Weird Tales magazines. It's where a lot of the famous science fiction writers first published. Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, people you've heard of, were published in these magazines originally. And they always have ads for the Rosicrucians, and you send off, and they'll send you this book called The Mastery of Life. Rosicrucians. So it's another one of those sort of secret societies. And again, I read this stuff, and sure enough, it says, it's an ancient thing, of course, and it's really ancient. It goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Rosicrucians. Oh, I forgot to show you this one. More about the UN, the cult of the all-seeing eye. Now, this is not an occult book. This is about the UN. And you can see that's a picture of the UN meditation room. Again, this is not made up. And they have a big black rock or black stone. That's what also the black cube. That's a big magnetite chunk in there in the meditation room. It's super occult. It is very occult. What else we got? Okay, we're back to the Rosicrucians. Here, I got the secret doctrine of the Rosicrucians. Again, it's not really secret, but it's just for the worthy, We've probably known Rosicrucians that were good people or something, but they didn't know about, the Lucifer part. I've probably, I may have read some more of these books than the Rosicrucians themselves have. You know what I'm saying? Than a typical Rosicrucian. To them, it might be just sort of a club. Here we go. Here's another Rosicrucian book. The Secret Doctrine of Jesus. So you can see that this secret doctrine principle is big. And I'm pretty sure that goes on with Catholicism. I think all the upper level, people over there in the Vatican are Luciferians. Almost certainly. And it's the same thing. They keep that from the laity, generally speaking. Look at that. Here's a card I have. Ooh. Thanks for supporting the Satanic Temple. I have a video out there where I went and saw where the Satanic Temple put their books in the library over there in Delta, Colorado. All right, where are we? Are we made it down to the Freemasons now? Is that where I am? Man, I mean, you could go all night on the Freemasons. Let me see, I got the Masonic Bible here. Now, this is a regular, beautiful King James Bible. Again, I told you how these Luciferian organizations operate. There's a secret doctrine, for one thing, and also that they kind of read the Bible from the flip side, if you will. Jehovah's the bad guy. Lucifer, the serpent, is the good guy, Satan. But right near the beginning here, they have a whole introduction from Aleister Crowley. I mean, that's what makes it really a Masonic Bible is that it's got these indexes and all this great stuff. Teaches about Freemasonry, of course, and the rites, but it also has a large, section from Aleister Crowley. And I'm telling you, Aleister Crowley literally says, that the true, pure doctrine of Lucifer is the deal. He says that. And then, here's another little Bible. This is I forget, that symbol, as above, so below, is really what that means. So if you hear that saying, as above, so below, it's kind of a perversion of as on earth as it is in heaven, except it's the other direction. As above, so below. That's why you'll see arrows pointing both ways. And then this is one I'm going to have to keep because people claim it doesn't exist sometimes. They say it's not a book or it's not a Mason book or whatever, but it totally is. And really the reason I found it was because of the Bible verse where it says, Jesus is the stone rejected by the builders. So I was researching who the builders are. Well, it's the Freemasons, and that's been going on since Solomon's temple, really. And before that, Nimrod was a builder. And so the whole thing is really overall in biblical Christianity, if you kind of look at the whole book there, God is not a big fan of building temples and pyramids or churches, cathedrals, any of those things. Does not like it. But anyway, the builders, it's totally Luciferian. Now, this is one I have read from cover to cover. And because it was good reading, I'm telling you. You can see where they'd suck them in. This is from 1921. Okay, we've all known wonderful people. One of the men I admire most was a Freemason. And, these guys, to them, they're playing cards or whatever and doing good deeds around the community. They don't realize that the secret doctrine's going on in the upper echelons and that really they're just contributing to this. It's in here. This is Luciferian serpent stuff, serpent worship. All right, let's keep going, man. Eckankar. I tried this when I lived out in Santa Barbara. Actually, I was living in an apartment in Carpinteria, as I recall, when I tried this, because some people were doing it that worked with me at the Santa Barbara Biltmore. And so this is a long time ago, right? But even way back then, I didn't really believe in Jesus or demons or any of this stuff. But I tried this, and I told those guys, I'm sure they remember, that the next morning I said, man, I felt like I got, like molested by a demon or something. And of course, that was the last time I ever messed with that. And so, here we go. Sybil Leek, big time New Age, My Life in Astrology. This is a famous book. This one guy, Schoenblend, I have him up here somewhere. Let's see if we can pull him up. He started out into New Age because of this book or another, My Life in the New Age or whatever, Sybil Leek's book, and then he became, all kinds of stuff. He became a master druid, and then super high-ranking Freemason, and then in multiple rites and just all these different things. Also, ultimately became a high-ranking Mormon also, and then now he's here to expose all those things. He made it through incredibly, but she is the one that started him off on that road. Check him out, William Schnobelin. He is the real deal, man. Being a druid, he was a druid. Eckhart Tolle, man, don't I have he shows up in one of my other videos, but that's Oprah's guy. And so it's all the same stuff. It's, look, awakening to your life's purpose. You want to have your best life now. You want to just, and you can just visualize it. It's all like The Secret. Remember she promoted that book, The Secret? The Power of Now. Come on, give me a break. Do you guys really think any of this stuff works? Seriously. Just is people running around healing people and creating fortunes with their minds and becoming rich and driving fast? They imagine they're going to drive, like say Joel Osteen might tell you, all you got to do is just visualize you're going to have a Ferrari and, you're going to have one. But I don't really see that happening. Nobody I know that's happened to. And I know New Age teachers probably watching this video that they've had hard times, floods or whatever. So do you really think you can create your heart's desire with your mind like this? And again, what they're doing is, it's back to Genesis 3 when the serpent says, oh, no, if you eat that, you'll have the knowledge, you'll have the secret ancient mystery knowledge. That's what the apple is. It's not a fruit. If you get this ancient secret knowledge, you can be as a god. You can create with your mind and your words just like God. You can heal just like God. And then you can ascend and become an ascended master once you've achieved perfection, like nirvana. And so, are you buying it? Another channel. What is this? The sign. Chosen by the Future by Haramania Dean Thomas. Channeled March 2009. There you go. Secret ancient mystery knowledge. The return of Merlin. Mystic magical stuff. Again, Deepak Chopra. I mean, man, that guy makes some money, doesn't he? Oh, by the way, that's one of my points I kind of wanted to make, really, was that anybody that, does spiritual work for pay, somehow their spirituality that they're teaching you, or whatever, is how they're generating their income. I mean, that's a big red flag, Christian or not. Anybody getting paid to be a Christian is probably not a Christian. I got news for you. All right. Rudolf Steiner, Presence of the Dead on the Spiritual Path. Again, this is some creepy stuff, huh? What else we got going over here? Let's see. Here's some Pachamama. This is from the United Nations also. What do you know, huh? Pachamama is an Amazonian fertility goddess, right? And they had her statue over at the Vatican. I mean, it's so strange. I mean, you'd think they would not have, occult idols over there at the Vatican, but they did. Pachamama. What else we got? We hit that yoga. Oh, yeah, here's where the guy says, this is it, just so we know. He says, Kaiut, K-A-I-U-T, does not work with spiritual elements. So if you want to do some yoga workout, I guess Kaiut is okay if you're a Christian. All right. Here's some, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. This stuff, I mean, they're just sort of angry, I guess. I don't know if you'd call it a cult. They're supposed to just be atheists, but they really go beyond atheism. They're, strongly anti-Christian. And like the person that I've known, the type of people that subscribe to this, I mean, man, they just get really upset. You start talking about God or something, man, they get upset. How about this one? Is that a cult? Bill Clinton. What happened was, I heard he was involved with voodoo and stuff, right? And again, one of the reasons I'm showing you this stuff is so that you know that this stuff is real, and that when I say something about it, I'm not just making it up. I didn't just see it. Somebody said it. Some nut on the internet said it. So was he involved with voodoo, do you think? This is his autobiography. Did you know that Clinton's college roommate, was at NYU, I think, was the grandson of the Haitian voodoo priest, the head priest of Haiti. And then he later on became the Haiti voodoo priest. So Clinton's college roommate became the high voodoo priest of Haiti. And of course, him and Hillary attended many voodoo ritual ceremonies or whatever. And then, Haiti, that's where they went to get married, right? I think, didn't they get married in Haiti? I think they did. And, they were involved with it a lot until they, the money disappeared or something. But anyway, yeah, so voodoo. They like voodoo. They enjoy it's the quote was that they enjoyed having spirits come in and out of them at these voodoo ceremonies. Sounds fun, doesn't it? And I thought LSD was something, you know. All right. Well, here we go. Sally Quinn. Do you know who she is? She was the wife of Ben Bradley, editor of the the Washington Post, right? Famous Ben Bradley. That's the big time. His wife, Sally Quinn. Well, she was from, like South Carolina or something where they had been, sort of a superstitious upbringing. And this book, she's really known as like a party, she wrote a book about hostessing parties, for example, in DC. So she's one of those like party ladies. My mom was one of them. But anyway, uh, in this book, she talks about how she got together with other people in DC and they would cast spells and curses on other people, and they worked. There you go. Sally Quinn, Washington Post. So people are gathering up in occult groups there in D.C., according to her, Ben Bradley's wife. Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. Vedanta Society. You notice how there's always a serpent. Think about it. Keep your eyes open. When you see like a serpent, I think that's kind of a red flag, right? If the symbol of your organization or whatever is a skulls or a serpent. Meditation and its methods. Again, this is an Eastern style meditation. Biblical meditation is just like where you're thinking about God, thinking about your ministry, thinking about a Bible verse, things like that. Sermon on the Mount by Swami Vivekananda. I love this book when I read it. He tries to discern, but again, it always gets back to an earthly application. The idea that Jesus died for sins and that kind of thing, Son of God, is not really in there. Ramakrishna and Christ, again, super mystics. So, they try and bring Jesus down to the level of one of the mystics, and they call themselves mystics down at the Presbyterian Church. So whatever. Good grief. I am a God. I'm not kidding. That guy was saying that in the sermon. I am a God. I am a God. Can you imagine? I just can't even imagine being in a church. Here, I don't know anything about this guy much, Dennis Hunter, but I still work over in Telluride, and I just happen to have come across some of these books, The Priestess of Moki Maya, and stuff, and the Halcyon Cry, and this sounds, a little bit creepy. Sacred Valley, very mystical, I imagine. Oh, okay. Let's see. We're getting down to the end, guys. I promise. Thanks for sticking in if you held in this long. Then there's people that just cash in on this stuff, like being evil, like this is shirt. And so look at this. Here's The Devil's Cut. Jim Beam. Unleash your inner sinister. And here's some recipes. They all are devilish. And so people just cash in, like Lady Gaga, for example, sort of cash in on this sort of evil, occult, devil kind of thing going on. Jim Beam, Devil's Cut. Boy, I need some of that. Hey, I hadn't had a drink in 28 years. Huh? And then here's a book, The Devil. Oh, not just you. Oh, yeah, here we go. Evil, a primer. And then finally, I want to get to this one. I'm going to keep this one, because it's too good. Flying Saucers in the Bible, pretty rare, I'm telling you. That is a rare book. But this is very well done. But it just brings up those ancient alien guys and what I've been telling you about the Luciferian doctrine. How here's the Luciferian doctrine. The angel of light, Lucifer, came down with the secret ancient mystery knowledge that caused man to rise up from just like being a caveman or just a savage and became a man. And so this and he talks about, they always talk about like the war on knowledge. There's no war on knowledge from Christianity, let me tell you. Scientists, scientists that had laws named after them, Boyle's Law, people like that, Steno's laws of and things. Those were Christian men. In fact, Boyle left science to become a full-time preacher. So, you know, but the reason I bring up the Luciferian doctrine is that the ancient alien guys, they teach the exact same thing. You'll hear them. They'll say that what happened was in the distant past, an alien or aliens came down with the knowledge for man. It's the exact same story, except it's physical alien creatures instead of Lucifer, the serpent, coming down. And so, but anyway, that's a great book, Brassington. And so it's really biblically done. You know what I mean? She did a great job. I like that book. Okay, so yeah, the Luciferian doctrine. Like say these Mormon kids came by, and I told them that I've been thinking about this Luciferian doctrine, and I told them what it was, and I said, "Does it sound familiar at all?" And they said no, and honestly, that's exactly their religion. This angel of light, Moroni, came down with the secret information on these tablets, and it got decoded with the special eyeglasses, and they get the special knowledge, and they can go ascend and have a planet be as a god. And that somehow that didn't sound at all familiar to them, even though that's exactly what their religion teaches. I don't have a Book of Mormon here. I'm just going to show you one last thing. Call it a night. The origin of species, evolution. Right in here, Darwin himself says that if no transitional fossils were found, he would change his own theory, right? And so that's one of the reasons I have his own book, because just to show that he actually does say that for yourself. But another thing I wanted to show, because a lot of what we're talking about is deception. Like this is maybe a Christian church, but actually they're teaching the Luciferian doctrine or the secret doctrine, where this organization, is mostly, humanitarian or whatever, but those guys up at the top are worshiping Lucifer. But there's so much deception going on, it's ridiculous. And I found this in an old textbook. This is an old biology textbook from like 1985, I think it is. And you can see this diagram here. Well, this was debunked in the 1890s. This was a fraud in the 1890s. So we've known, at the time this was published, for nearly 100 years that this was fraudulent. And yet they went ahead and put it in this biology textbook. And that the point I'm making here is that this goes on constantly. The other day I saw where Neil deGrasse Tyson said, if you disagree with a scientist, it means you're wrong. Ha! Well, this is the proof that they lie often to get their grants or whatever. All right, well, thanks for listening. I sorry it took so long. And again, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Catch you next time.